wanting to know what some of our men and women have done, you know. So here's my brother Michael. Mike was a 19-year-old young fella. Like all these other young men and women that served our country at that era of Vietnam. He thought it was the right thing to do, fighting communism. And that was what they felt they were doing. So when Michael went into the service, he did his basic training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then he did his advanced training, one of his advanced trainings out at Fort Ord in California. And then after that, his real infantry training at Fort Benning in Georgia. So from there, he had a little R&R. He came home back to Philadelphia where we grew up. Mom and Dad had a dual party. The oldest brother, Charlie, was a combat Marine in 67, 68. He came home in April 68. Michael was being shipped out in September, early September of 68. So Mom and Dad had a big gathering of all the friends of the family and whatnot back at our home in West Oak Lane in Philadelphia. And that was our last time we saw Michael alive. So he went over, hit in country, as they say, September 22nd, 1968. And then on the day that you see on the tombstone, November 20th of 68, he was charging up a mountainous terrain in what they call, I think, Num Cham, in that part of South Vietnam. It was heavily fortified. They did not really understand how well entrenched the North Vietnamese army was, but they were entrenched like in these little bunkers. Like if you guys ever saw an old World War II flick, and you'll see the German bunkers, like on the Normandy invasion, they had those bunkers. Well, just think, in Vietnam they had similar maybe, but not as well fortified, but they were well hidden among this mountain trail. That his unit, his platoon was pinned down pretty bad. And so for some ungodly known reason, Michael got up from the safety of his foxhole, grabbed the nearby gun, which was what they call an M60, and charged up the mountain, and he started to knock off these bunkers to protect his brothers in arms, the soldiers that were pinned down. And one of them, and the man is still alive today, his medic, his name is Bill Stafford. They called him Doc. The men and the women that are in the service, their medics are called Doc. You know, that's their name. And so Doc Stafford was actually administering first aid to one of the point men that was cut down from machine gun fire. And all of a sudden, he just saw somebody go by him and says, "I got this, Doc." And this was Doc Stafford's words to me years later. He said, "All I knew, your brother," he says, "I got this, Doc." So he charged up, knocking out the third bunker to protect his medic and the fallen soldier that was injured. And then he got up to a fourth bunker, and then that's when some intense machine gun fire came and took him out. You know, so from what I have gathered, his lieutenant colonel at the time was what they call the CO, the commanding officer of that action, saw all this among other witnesses that survived that battle. It was a 3-day battle, evidently. You know, this was just the start of it. So there was 2 more days of action like this, that they had to climb up this mountain and secured it. Whatever that was worth, they secured this mountain fortification for the American soldiers and Marines that were on the other side of the mountain. And his lieutenant colonel at that time, who's now a retired 3-star general, which is called Lieutenant General, Sam Wetzel, who lives in Columbus, Georgia, had said numerous times that if it wasn't for Michael, I would not be here, and a lot of the other men would not be here. So the Lieutenant Colonel, who is now Lieutenant General Wetzel, put Michael in for the Medal of Honor. And about a year and a half later, there was a knock on the door back in our home in Philadelphia. I was in 8th grade at that time, and it was in April of 1970 that my parents and my brother Charlie, who was just finishing up his training with the New Jersey State Police, and my third brother Peter was in the Marine Corps boot camp. Now this is 1970, so the war was still raving on. So Peter was the third brother that was going to be involved with Vietnam. So he was in boot camp, and they got their orders from President Nixon at that time to let him out of boot camp so he could attend the White House ceremony with my parents and my oldest brother Charlie, to see Michael, and there were 20 other young men. There were 21 men receiving the Medal of Honor, what they call posthumously. They were killed in action from all over the country. So there were 21 different families at the White House that day receiving the medal from President Nixon for their sons. So at that time, it was like the largest ever grouping of Medal of Honor recipients at that time to receive the medal. So, you know, it still goes on. Michael must have had an effect, because as Patrick Hughes right behind you has said, and he said to this young man Joe from Atlantic City that there's actually a statue of Michael, a bronze statue, that the Vietnam veterans in Philadelphia raised enough monies to hire a sculptor to sculpt a statue of Michael holding his M60. And he's overlooking his brothers that were all killed from Philadelphia, what they call the Philadelphia-Vietnam Wall. And it's pretty amazing that his fellow brother soldiers wanted to do that, to honor one of their fallen brothers. And he represents all the men and women. I mean, people forgot that there's women on that wall over here at the Vietnam Wall. There are, I think, 8 or 9 of them. And most of them were nurses. And they saw a lot that you shouldn't see as a young girl. And some of them were only 18, 19 years of age, you know, are nurses, you know. So they saw what war did. So all I can tell you is it's not good. War's not a good thing, but you gotta have the men and women that'll step up, because this is our freedoms handed from us, from God. And I'm not a politician, and I think the politicians have ruined this country. I don't care who you vote for. They forget our military. They forget our military history, good or bad. This is still the best country in the world. And it's because of this. All you guys see is these tombstones, these men and women. Yeah, these men and women that, you know, gave their lives. Not all of them were killed in action, but some of them gave 30, 40 years to this country. And they did it because they loved their God, they loved their country, they loved their families. So this is all I can say. That's my spiel, you know. But
about the hospital.
Oh yeah, and actually one Vietnam veteran, his name was Frank Tacey, who was Air Force, served over near Da Nang and some of the air bases outside Da Nang and Saigon. He grew up in Philadelphia also, a neighboring high school. We met here to put Reeves down, and he asked me, hey, what would you think if you give me the permission, you ask your brothers, we would like to, I would like to see if we can get the Philadelphia VA hospital renamed after your brother. And I looked at him, I said, what, are you crazy? He says, no, He says, I think that's why I'm here. That's why I'm alive. He says, I want to keep this man's memory alive, along with our other veterans that are getting their care there, to remember the sacrifices of the Vietnam vet. He did. It only took him close to 5 years to get it done, because that's Congress. You know, unfortunately, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a politically correct person, so I'm not a big fan of our people that are in office. I vote. That's your right. It's a fundamental right to vote, and you vote your conscience, but some of them shouldn't even be there. But anyway, it took about 5 years, and they did rename it. It was an act of Congress to have that VA renamed, because it is a federal law, you know. So back in Philly, where we grew up, it's renamed after Michael. It's called the Corporal Michael J. Crescenz VA facility. So people from all over the region come there to get their care. So I just hope our doctors and nurses do their job and do it well, you know, for our aging veterans that need the help. So that's the spiel there, young ladies. So, you know, there it is. And he's just one of many. You know, I mean, everybody, every tombstone can tell you a story. I'm just fortunate enough I'm here to tell you girls.